She did everything right. She filled out every application. She submitted pay stubs, bank statements, letters from every employer she had worked for in the last 6 years. She provided 3 personal references and 2 professional ones. She paid every application fee, which were non-refundable, which she knew. She was turned down 4 times by the same landlord on 4 different properties over the course of 3 months. The first time, she was told the application was incomplete. She went home and checked the application. It was not incomplete. The second time, she was told a previous tenant had come back and wanted the unit. She had driven by the unit 3 weeks later. It was still vacant. The third time, she was told her income verification had been submitted too late, even though she had submitted it within the window she had been given. She had the email with the timestamp. She did not send it. The fourth time, Gerald Marsh looked at Latasha O'Neill across his clipboard and told her, very calmly, very professionally, in the particular tone of a man who has had this conversation many times and has made his peace with having it, that he had decided to keep the unit off the market for the time being. She drove to the parking lot 2 blocks over. She sat in her car for 20 minutes. She thought about the folder on her passenger seat. The tabbed, laminated folder with every application, every rejection, every email, every pay stub, organized and dated and in order, and she thought about the 4 months she had spent doing everything right and getting nowhere, and the friend's spare room she was still sleeping in, and the fact that she was 44 years old and had left a good life in Orlando to come back and be here, and this was where she had gotten. Then she called her brother. She had not wanted to call her brother. He answered on the first ring. He was in Houston by the following morning. And Gerald Marsh had no idea, when he looked at the name on Latasha's lease application, that the last name meant exactly what it meant. He found out. The 3rd Ward of Houston is one of the oldest African-American neighborhoods in the city. It sits southeast of downtown, south of the University Corridor along Cleburne Street, hemmed in on several sides by freeways that were built through it in the 1960s, the way freeways were built through black neighborhoods in that era, without much consultation and with considerable consequences for the communities they divided. The ward has a history that is deep and specific and worth knowing, a center of black cultural and economic life in Houston for over a century, of historically black colleges and universities, of churches that have been anchoring the same blocks since Reconstruction, of barbershops and beauty salons and restaurants and music venues, and a whole infrastructure of community built by people who built it because they understood it would not be built for them. It also has, like many such neighborhoods in many such cities, a housing market that has spent the last decade under the particular kind of pressure that comes when a city grows fast and unevenly, and the people with money discover the charm of a neighborhood that people without much money have been maintaining for generations. Property values rise. Long-term residents get priced out. The community infrastructure, the churches, the barbershops, the relationships between neighbors who have been neighbors for 30 years, frays along the edges, slowly enough that you can tell yourself it isn't happening until it has already happened. Gerald Marsh had owned property in the 3rd Ward for 22 years. He had arrived with a small inheritance and a real estate license and a belief, which had proven financially correct, that buying modest residential properties in transitional neighborhoods and holding them for the long term was a sound investment strategy. He had 4 small rental houses on a 2-block stretch of Blodgett Street, 2 bedrooms, wood frame, decent condition. The kind of property that would not win awards, but would absolutely do the job if the job was a clean, functional home in a neighborhood with roots. He maintained them adequately. He paid his taxes. He fixed what broke in a time frame he described to himself as reasonable, and his tenants described differently. He was 58 years old. He had a small office in the front room of one of the properties where he kept his files and met with applicants. He held a clipboard at showings. He did not need the clipboard. Nothing on it was pertinent to the showing. Nothing that could not have been handled just as well with a phone in his pocket. But the clipboard gave him something to hold, and something to look down at, which was useful in the moments when he was deciding things and preferred not to be observed deciding them. He had a system. It was not a written system. It lived in his instincts and his read on applicants and a set of criteria that he had never committed to paper, Because to commit them to paper would have been to name them, and he did not want to name them. Because naming them would have made it considerably harder to tell himself what he told himself, which was that he was careful and fair, and that he ran his properties well, and that not every applicant was the right fit. He told himself this genuinely. He had told it to himself for 22 years, and the telling had smoothed it down to something that felt like truth. He had turned down Latasha O'Neil 4 times across 3 months. In the 2 years prior to that, he had turned down 11 other applicants who shared certain characteristics with Latasha O'Neil. He had approved, in that same period, 7 applicants who shared certain other characteristics. He had never written any of this down. He did not think of it as a pattern. He thought of it as a series of individual decisions, each one with its own reasoning, each one defensible on its own terms, which was what he required them to be. Latasha O'Neil was born in Newark, New Jersey, the younger sister of a boy who would eventually become very famous, which was a fact she understood early and held at a certain distance because she was not the kind of person who wanted to be understood primarily in relation to someone else. She was herself first. That had required some work in a family that was well acquainted with large presences. But she had done the work, and the work had held. She was 44 years old. She had spent 18 years as a certified nursing assistant, first in Newark, then in Orlando, where she had built a life that suited her. A small apartment near a park, a car that ran reliably, a small circle of people she trusted, a routine organized around her work schedule at a medical facility that paid her fairly and treated her with respect. She had been there for 9 years. She had not been planning to leave. Then Lucille's health scare. A cardiac event in November. Nothing catastrophic, but enough. Enough to frighten Latasha at 11 at night when the call came. Enough to land Lucille in the hospital for 4 days. Enough to make clear that Lucille O'Neil, who was 72 years old and had spent that entire span of years refusing to need anyone, now needed, at a minimum, someone close by. She was the one who went. Not because it was assigned to her, not because she was asked. Because she was available in the way that meant something. Available in her whole self, not just in time or money, but in the willingness to restructure. She gave notice at her job in Orlando. She packed what fit in her car. She drove to Houston, where Lucille had been living for the last several years, near family, in the neighborhood where she had always said she wanted to end up. She moved into the spare room of her friend Denise's house in the 3rd Ward. Denise was generous, and her house was small, and Latasha had been there for 8 months, which was 4 months longer than either of them had planned, and which was beginning to cost something in the particular currency of close quarters and borrowed time. She had applied for 4 places. She had been rejected 4 times. She was good at her job. She had a clean rental history going back 14 years. She had references who answered the phone and said true things about her. She had submitted every document they asked for, sometimes twice. She had paid $45 per application, which was $180 she did not get back. In 9 years in Orlando, she had built a life that was genuinely hers. She had a regular table at a diner on Orange Avenue where the owner knew her order. She had colleagues who became friends, and then the kind of friends who were not conditional on proximity. She had a patient, an elderly man named Mr. Vernon, 83 years old, who she had been caring for across 4 years of declining health, who used to say that Latasha had the best poker face of anyone he had ever met, by which he meant that she brought her full self into the room without making you feel the weight of it. She thought about that sometimes. She thought about it in the spare room at Denise's house, on the mornings when the wait was considerable. She thought, get up, get dressed, go do the job. That's the poker face. Not hiding it, carrying it without putting it down on someone else. She had been home in Houston for 8 months when she called Shaq. 8 months of Denise's generosity, and 4 application fees, and 4 different explanations from the same man with the same clipboard. She was 44 years old, and she had left something real to come back and do the right thing. And she was sleeping in a spare room, and she was tired in a way that was not about sleep. She kept everything in a folder. She had started the folder after the 2nd rejection, when something in the pattern began to feel like something other than bad luck. She organized it chronologically, and then by property, with tabs she labeled in her careful handwriting, and she kept it on the passenger seat of her car so she would have it if she ever needed it. She had not decided what she would do with it. She had just decided she would keep building it, because the folder was evidence, and evidence was a form of power even when you didn't yet know how to use it. After the fourth rejection, she sat in the parking lot 2 blocks from Gerald Marsh's office and held the folder in her hands and thought about what was in it. 4 applications. 4 rejections. 4 different reasons that each made just enough procedural sense to be difficult to directly challenge. Timestamps. Email threads. A record that was complete and organized and utterly insufficient to fix anything on its own. She sat with that for 20 minutes. Then she called Shaq. She had not wanted to call him. This requires explaining, because to someone who has not spent their life alongside a very famous sibling, the reluctance might seem strange. Why would you not call? But Latasha had spent 4 decades carefully, intentionally building a life that did not run on her brother's name, or his access, or his considerable ability to make things move. She called him on birthdays and to check on him, and when something happened in the family. She did not call to ask him to solve things. That was not the relationship she had built, and it was not the relationship she wanted. She called him because of what was in the folder. Because 4 rejections with 4 different procedural explanations from the same landlord on 4 different properties was not bad luck, and she knew it, and she needed someone to know it with her. He picked up on the first ring. She said, "I need to tell you something." And she told him, in order, the way she did everything. He listened without interrupting, which meant she could hear him listening. The particular quality of silence from a person who is taking something in rather than waiting for their turn to speak. When she finished, he said, "You kept everything?" "It's in a folder," she said. Organized. A pause that was approximately 3 seconds long. "Send me a photo of the folder," he said. "I'll be there tomorrow." She started to say that he didn't have to, that she could figure out another approach, that there were housing advocacy organizations she had been meaning to contact. He waited for her to finish. Then he said, quietly, "Latasha, send me the photo." She sent him the photo. He was in Houston by 7 the following morning. He did not go directly to Gerald Marsh. He went first to Denise's house, where Latasha was making coffee and had laid the full folder open on the kitchen table. He sat down and read through it, every tab, every page, every email. He read it the way he read anything that mattered, completely, without skimming, with the folder flat in front of him and the pages turned carefully. He took 22 minutes. When he finished, he sat back and looked at his sister across the table. 4 times, he said. 4 times, she said. Each one a different reason. Each one just close enough to plausible. He looked at the folder. He thought about Latasha at 18 years old, studying for her SENA certification at the kitchen table in Newark while their mother worked a double shift, not asking anyone for anything, working the way their mother had taught them both to work, which was steadily and without fanfare. He thought about the 9 years in Orlando that she had built piece by piece and then disassembled and packed into a car to come back and be near Lucille. He thought about 8 months in a spare room when she deserved a place of her own. His jaw did not tighten. He did not grip the table. He sat very still, in the way that very large people sometimes go very still when they have made a decision, because the decision takes up all the energy that was available. "Are there other people?" he asked. "Other tenants he's done this to?" "I met a man in the parking lot after the 3rd rejection," she said. "Marcus." He said Marsh had turned him down twice on 2 different properties. Same thing, different reasons each time. "You have his number?" "I have his number." He took out his phone and made a call. Not to Gerald Marsh. To a woman named Dr. Renee Holloway, who ran a Houston-based housing equity organization called the Third Ward Community Land Trust. He had been on the trust's advisory board for 3 years. He had been funding a particular initiative of the trust for 18 months, the acquisition of distressed and underperforming rental properties in the Third Ward for conversion to permanently affordable community housing. The initiative had been working its way through several parcels. 2 of those parcels were on Blodgett Street. He had a conversation with Dr. Renner Holloway that lasted 11 minutes. He asked her 3 specific questions. He received 3 answers. He thanked her and hung up. Then, he called Marcus Cole. He met Marcus Cole at a coffee shop on Emancipation Avenue. Marcus was 31 years old, with the contained, watchful manner of someone who has learned to measure situations before committing to them. He had lived in the Third Ward his whole life. He had a stable job in logistics. He had a clean record and a solid rental history, and he had been turned down twice by Gerald Marsh on 2 different units, with 2 different reasons, in 4 months. He told his story. Shaq listened. When Marcus finished, Shaq said, "You still have the emails?" "Every one of them," Marcus said. "Can you forward them to this address?" He wrote an email address on a napkin. "Dr. Holloway's organization. Don't worry about context. She'll know what they're for." Marcus looked at the napkin. Looked at Shaq. "What's happening?" "Something that should have happened a while ago," he said. He paused. "Are you still looking for a place on Blodgett?" Marcus looked at him carefully. "Yeah, give me 2 weeks." He went to see Gerald Marsh on a Thursday afternoon. He went alone. He did not bring his assistant, did not bring a lawyer, did not bring anyone. He drove himself to the address in the Third Ward and parked at the curb, and walked up the steps to the small office Marsh kept in the front of one of his properties, and knocked. Marsh opened the door with the clipboard already in his hand. He looked up. He registered who was in front of him. The clipboard dropped slightly. "Mr. O'Neill," he said. His voice was carefully neutral, the way voices go when they are trying to process something very fast. "I don't have a. Is there something I can help you with?" "There is," Shaq said. "Can we sit down?" They sat. He put the folder on the desk between them. Marsh looked at it. He recognized it, the tabs, the organization, the format of his own rejection letters repeated 4 times in sequence. "My sister applied for 4 of your properties over 3 months," Shaq said. "She was turned down 4 times. Different reason each time. I've read every piece of correspondence. I've read the application requirements. I've looked at the timestamps." He paused. "Her applications were complete. Her income verified on time. The unit you said the previous tenant reclaimed was listed as available on your own website for 6 more weeks after you told her that." Marsh's face had settled into something careful. Something that was not quite denial, and not quite admission. "I understand there can be good faith differences about—" He started. "I'm not here to argue about the applications," Shaq said. He said it calmly. "I know what happened and you know what happened. We don't have to agree on it out loud." He looked at Marsh steadily. "I'm here because I want to ask you something. My sister spent 4 months doing everything right. She submitted everything you asked for. She paid every fee. She drove to every showing. She kept every email." He let that sit for a moment. "She is 44 years old. She left a life she built in Orlando to come back and be near our mother. She has been sleeping in her friend's spare room for 8 months. He leaned forward slightly. "I want you to tell me what reason. What actual reason a woman like that gives you to turn her away 4 times. The room was quiet. Marsh looked at the folder. He did not answer. "You don't have to tell me," Shaq said. "I already know. And the people at the Third Ward Community Land Trust already know. And the housing attorney they've been working with already knows. Because she has Marcus Cole's emails too, and yours make a pattern that is considerably easier to see when you put them next to each other." He paused. "I'm not here to threaten you. I want to be clear about that. I am not threatening you. What happens legally is between you and the attorneys, and I'm not part of that." He straightened in the chair. "But I want to tell you something. The Land Trust has been acquiring properties on Blodgett Street for the past 18 months. 2 of the parcels they've been working on are adjacent to your properties. They're moving forward on those acquisitions this quarter." He paused. "The community development plan for that corridor includes the full block, including these 4 properties, if you're willing to sell. They'll pay fair market value." Marsh stared at him. "You're buying my properties," he said. "The trust is offering to buy them," Shaq said. "From you. At a fair price. Today that's an option. After the housing complaint is formally filed and the investigation starts, the timing and the terms get harder to control for everybody." He paused. "I'm not telling you what to do. I'm telling you what the options look like right now. He stood up. He was very tall in that small office. He picked up the folder. One more thing, he said. He kept his voice low, completely level. My sister came to 4 showings in 3 months, and every time she walked out of here, she was carrying something you put on her. She is a woman who does not ask for help. She does not make complaints. She keeps folders, and she drives home, and she tries again. He paused. The reason she called me is that she ran out of tries. Not out of ability. Out of tries. He looked at Marsh. I think you know who you were turning away. I think some part of you knew every time. I just wanted to make sure you had the chance to sit with that while it's still early enough for sitting to mean something. He left. He walked down the steps and to his car and sat in it for a moment with both hands on the wheel. He thought about Latasha at the kitchen table in Orlando, 9 years in, building something piece by piece. He thought about her driving to Houston with her life in a suitcase because their mother needed someone close. He thought about 4 application fees at $45 each, paid and not refunded. $180 in 4 months, and a folder organized with tabs, because she knew, somewhere, that she was going to need it. He thought about the clipboard. He started the car. He had places to be. Gerald Marsh called Dr. Holloway's organization the following Monday. The negotiation over the 4 properties on Blodgett Street took 6 weeks. They settled at fair market value. Marsh received what the properties were worth, and not more, which was the agreement he had walked into, and the agreement he accepted. He was not ruined. He was not shamed publicly. He sold 4 houses to a community land trust that would rent them, permanently and affordably, to residents of the 3rd Ward who had spent too long being told, in one procedural language or another, that they did not qualify. Latasha O'Neill moved into one of those units in June. It was a 2-bedroom on Blodgett Street. It had a front porch with a railing that needed painting, which she painted herself the first weekend because she had decided it was her place, and she was going to make it look like it. She hung her grandmother's photograph in the hallway. She put her nursing certifications on the wall in the study, which was the 2nd bedroom, which she had set up as a workspace because she had been offered a position at a clinic 4 blocks away and had accepted it. She called Shaq when she had the keys. I'm in, she said. How is it? It needs some work. Do you need? I have it, she said. I'm handling it. He knew better than to push. I know you are, he said. The porch railing is going to need paint, she said. It's a specific shade of green. I've been looking at samples. Green, a particular green. I haven't committed yet. He was quiet for a moment. I'm glad you called me, he said. She was quiet for a moment on her end. I should have called earlier, she said. After the 2nd one. A pause. I kept thinking I'd figure it out. You did figure it out, he said. You kept the folder. She looked down at the folder in her hands, sitting on the kitchen counter of the new apartment. Organized, tabbed, laminated, it had done its job. She didn't know what to do with it now. She thought she might keep it anyway. I'm going to go paint the railing, she said. What color? I told you. A particular green. I haven't committed. Okay, he said. She hung up. She went to find a brush. Marcus Cole moved into the unit 2 doors down from Latasha's in July. He had lived in the 3rd Ward his whole life, and it was the first place in the 3rd Ward he had ever had his name on a lease. He painted his front door the same week he moved in. Not green. Red. A very specific red, the color of the front door of the house his grandmother had owned on Dowling Street before she sold it. A color he had been carrying in his memory for 15 years, waiting for somewhere to put it. He and Latasha met on the sidewalk that first Saturday. She had a paintbrush. He had a paintbrush. They looked at each other's doors. Yours is good, he said. Yours is very red. She said, it's supposed to be very red. Then it's good, she said. They stood on the sidewalk in the July heat and looked at the block, at the houses that had sat on this land for decades, at the doors in the colors they had chosen, at the railing she still had to finish and the step on his side that needed fixing, and all the small, particular work of a place that has become yours. You know what I keep thinking about? Marcus said. What? I applied for the second one in February, he said. I remember it was February, because it was cold and I showed up in my good coat. He shook his head. He looked at my application for about 90 seconds. Latasha nodded. He had the clipboard. He always had the clipboard, Marcus said. What was even on that thing? She looked at the door she had painted. At the railing, still unfinished. Nothing, she said. Nothing was on it. Now I want to hear from you. Where are you watching from right now? Drop your city and country in the comments. I love seeing how far these stories travel. If this story moved you, even just a little, hit that like button. It takes 1 second, but it helps more people find stories like this one. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel and tap that bell so you never miss another video. But here's the most important thing I'll ask you today. Share this video. Send it to your mom. Send it to someone who needs to hear that doing everything right is worth it. That the folder matters. That the timestamps matter. That the person who keeps going after the fourth door closes is the one who ends up inside. Because kindness is free. And sharing it costs nothing. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Content Big Shaq, script framework _ final. MDMD.